Hello everyone. In this tutorial video, I'm going to explain the following topics. XML Schema Definition, that's the main topic, and then its purposes, what is schema root element, the referencing a schema in the XML document, element cardinality, complex elements, compositors, XSD simple element, its built-in types or the built-in types for XSD or schema, the default and the fixed values. Over here, I have an example of XML document and its equivalent schema file. But before that, if you are not yet subscribed in this channel, please do subscribe. Hit also the notification bell so that you will get updates on my latest upload or new video that I'm going to upload in this channel. And so what is an XML Schema Definition file or the XSD file? Basically, this describes the structure of an XML document. Its purpose is to identify which elements and attribute can appear in a document or the XML document, the order of the elements that you can put or place in an XML document, the data types that you can use for each element or the attribute value as well, and also the default and the fixed values for each elements and attributes. So you can specify the default values for each element and attributes. So basically you're creating a rule on how to use the XML document. You're creating a guideline on what to place in as far as the values of each element and attributes that you're going to place in your XML document. So basically that's the XML Schema Definition file. When you save this file, it should be .xsd file. The file name extension should be .xsd file, all right, or .xsd. So you can save it any file name you want, but you have to save it as .xsd file. Now, let's start by having an example. So basically, I have here a complete one. I have an XML file here, and this is the corresponding schema file here. So as you notice here, it's only elements that I have here, and there are no attributes for each element, or some of the elements, or all of the elements actually doesn't have an attribute. So we will cover that on the next video tutorial. Okay, so as well as child or children for each element. The only element here with the child or children will be the record element. So that will cover on the next video tutorial. So I hope you will be watching that one as well. Okay, it's a continuation of this tutorial video. All right, so the first thing that you need to consider here when you are creating an XML document with corresponding schema file is that you have to make sure that you reference the schema file in the XML document. Basically, when we say referencing, is that you're telling the XML document which schema file to follow. All right, because here you will be creating two files, one XML file and the corresponding schema file. The schema file is where you describe the XML document. So that is very easy to do because all you need to do is to, like for example here, you have to specify it in the root element here. You have to specify it, the referencing in the root element of your XML document. So as you can see here. So schema location is equal to the name of the XSD file. So in this case, the XSD file is example1.xsd. So that means the schema file that will describe this XML document is in this file, example1.xsd. So this means also that you're going to save both of this file on the same folder. All right, so for instance here, here it is. So example1, that's the XML file, and example1, that's the schema file. Okay, so that's how it is. Again, after you created your XSD file, you make sure that you save it as any file name with an extension of file name extension of .xsd. Okay, so if you are using a Notepad++, that will be easy. All you need to do is to, again, just, I'm sure that you know all of this thing. Save as, you make sure that you save it as any name that you want, and .xsd. Okay, to make it simple, you can just select the all types here in the save as type. All right, all types here, and make sure that it is, the file name should have .xsd file, .xsd extension, and you just have to click the save. Okay, you will know that you are correct in saving it because when you check your folder where you save your file, you will see here the type, in the column type, you will see here schema file or XML schema file. It means you saved the file as .xsd file, and you are correct with that. Right? For the XML, you will see there XML file. Right? So the XML file should be saved as any file name with an extension of .xml file. So it's going to be like that. I have a video on how to create an XML file. You can watch that in this channel and learn from it how to create the XML file. Now let's continue with our discussion here. And so that's the first thing that you need to do. Now, this one here, it uses namespace, XML and NS. So XSI, this will be the default here. So you can just use this one here. And it is a reference to this URI. Okay, I have a video also that explained a namespace. You can also watch that so that you will better understand what this means here. But basically, this is just a URI, okay, pointing to this site here. Okay, now this is very important because this one should be exactly like this, and it should not change, including the casing. So you have here capital X, capital M, L, and S. Okay, so this is how it is spelled. If you, for instance, misspelled even a single character only, it will not work. So I'm going to try to save it, and let's validate it. Okay, validating this XML document using Notepad++ is very easy. Okay, you just have to make sure that you have a plugins. Okay, it's called the XML Tools plugins. If you have it, to validate this XML document here, it's very simple. Just select plugins, XML Tools, validate now. And here it is. You see, it will give you this error message because you have a wrong spelling. So this is what I mean here. So you have to make sure that it should be spelled correctly and it should be pointing here in this URI. So it should be like this, including this attribute name here, schema location. It should be using capital L. So that's the first thing that you need to consider. Going back to the plugins, once again, if you don't have the plugins, again, I'm using here a Notepad++ so that I can validate. Using the Notepad++, you can validate your schema file as against this XML document. Okay, so all you need to have is the XML Tools plugin. If you don't have that, all you need to do is to go to the plugins admin here. You just have to select this. And over these three tabs, you have to select the available and you just have to go to the XML Tools. So you have to select it here. If you don't have it yet, it's not yet installed, you should see it here. So you should see XML Tools. So just check it, click the checkbox for that XML Tools and click install. And it will be installed. Alright, so once it is installed, you will notice that you have these plugins here, XML Tools plugins here. That's how it is. Okay, so better use a Notepad++ because that will be the much simplest way. It's a simplest way to validate your XML document. Now, to continue, so that's the first thing that you have to do. You have to make sure that it is going to reference to the schema file that you created. So that is for the XML document. Now, creating the XSD file is very simple. So the first thing that you have to consider here is to make sure that you have XML declaration, which is here in line number 1 here. Okay. The next thing that you need to consider, that you need to do, is to make sure that you have first the schema root element. Okay. The schema root element is the first element that you need to use. So you just have to place this element right on the beginning or right at the beginning in something like this. Alright, so you can specify your own namespace here. Here I used AA. You can specify your own. However, you have to make sure that this URI here should be exactly like this. Wrong spelling of this or any character missing from this spelling here will not work. Now, this is the same with what you put in the XML, except that you just have to remove the instance. Dash instance, you have to remove that. And then the rest, you can just copy and paste it here. It's going to be like that. This is the first thing that you need to put or place whenever you are creating an XML schema file. Okay. Now, I'm going to just remove this so that you will understand better. We will just place it one by one. I'm going to put it in another file. So this is it. The next thing here that you need to consider now is you have to see now your XML document. Again, the purpose of the XSD file is to make sure that your XML file will follow your XSD schema or the schema file. Okay, because the very purpose of this schema file is to make sure that all the elements here are defined, right? The order as well, if you want that, will be followed by this XSD file. So like I said, basically you are setting the rule on how to place the XML elements, the data that you can put, including the data type, and you will define those in the XSD file. So assuming this is how I want it to be, I will have here in my XML, I will have here an element here, and then it will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements. So for instance, this is how I want it to be. This is the order that I want. Name first, and then followed by company, phone, date hard, salary. So these are the rules that I want for my XML document here. The data that I need to put here will be, well, for the salary, it will be something like this. For the date hard, for the phone, the company, and the name. So basically, these are set of strings. Or for the salary here, it will be a number. For the date, it should be a valid date. Okay, so it's going to be like this. For the company and the name, it should be a string data type, something like this. Okay, so let's follow. This is what we want to do. So this is how we will describe it in the XSD file. So the next thing that you will do now for your XSD file is to make sure that you define each of this element here in your XML document. So you have to start it with the root, then followed by the child, or the child or the children. Okay, and then this child will have also an element, the name, company, phone, date hard, salary. So this is how you will do it here in the XML schema file or the XSD file. So you have to do it one by one. So start it with the root element. So you have to define these elements one by one here in the XSD file. Okay, so the first thing or the second thing now that you need to consider is this one here, right over here. I'm just going to copy it and I'm just going to place it there. Here it is. So we have to define first what is contact info. Okay, it's a root element with children. If it has children, as you can see here, always ask yourself what this root element or this element will be. Well, it is a root element, so definitely it will have children. So we have record here and another record here. So these are two children of the contact info here. So if it has a children, immediately you just have to place the ending element. So it will be something like, here it is. So you have here your element contact info now here. Okay, so always ask yourself if the element that you would like to define have a children or without a children. With children, you have to do it something like this. I will be discussing if without children on the later part of this as we go along when I discuss name and company and so on. Okay, so for now, it will be something like this. Right? So you have defined now contact info. And it will have children or child. I mean children here because it has two, just the same. They are just the same, but we consider them as children. So record. So the next thing that you will do is you have to put now here complex type and sequence. Okay, so again, you have to put the ending element for these two types of elements. Okay, so basically, what is complex type and sequence? Let's go to our notes. So, complex elements are elements that contain elements or attributes. So here, okay, here you are saying that the contact info will have children. So you're going to say complex type because it has children. As you can see here, it has children record here and another one here. They are the same in spelling, but because they are more than one, the record element is more than one, so it's children, or these are what we call children. Okay, now there is what we call the sequence. What do you mean by the sequence? Sequence is a compositor. There are three compositors: the sequence, the choice, and the all. When we say sequence, it simply means that the child elements, right? The child elements, in this case, the child elements here will be record. Also here, for the record, it has child elements: name, company, phone, date, hard. So it means that the child elements in the XML document must appear in the order they are declared in the XSD schema file. Okay, so because that is what we want, we will follow this order here: name first and then company, phone, date, hard, and salary. So we will be using the sequence. Okay, so if you don't like to follow the sequence of your element, for example, the salary will come first before the name, all right? Or the date hard will come first before the phone. Okay, so in other words, if you don't like to follow the order here, okay, so you can specify that in the XSD by using all here. So instead of sequence, you can say all. But what about the choice? The choice here would simply mean only one child in the elements described in the XSD schema file can appear in the XML document. It means in your XSD here, you can specify all this. You can describe all these elements, but you can only use one of them. That's the meaning of the choice here. I'm going to provide you an example later. So in the meantime, let's just be using sequence. So again, the purpose of the sequence is to make sure that the order that we want is followed. So for instance, I want first name here, company here, phone here, date hard, salary. So we use the sequence. In this case, because we are still in the contact info, so we'll use the sequence so that all the children of contact info will be in order. That's the meaning of that. It's just that it is just that in this example we have only one name for the child, and that is the record. But because we are using it more than once, so these are still considered children. So we can use the sequence. Okay, so it's going to be like that. So this ends now the definition for the contact info. Okay, so it is expecting, the schema file is expecting that you have inside the contact info will have children, and it will follow the sequence, okay, of what you will define here. Your XML document will follow the order that you will specify here for the XML document. Okay. The next now is the record. We're done with the contact info. Let's do now the record. So as you can see, you ask yourself, what is record? So it is an element with children. So basically, what we're going to do is the same with the contact info. So I just need to copy this, like I said. So it will be something like this. All right. I'll just make sure that, oops, not this one here. All right. So you just have to make sure that you have the ending element for this. I will just copy this one here, and I will just put it here. Also for this one here, I'll copy that one and make sure that you have it here. And also for the element, I will just copy this and I will just put it here. There you go. All right. So, and I'm going to change now the element name, which is record, as you can see here. Again, why they are the same? So because what we want to do is that it will follow this order here. This is what I want: name, company, phone. This is the order of my element. Okay, I should put first the name, the company, and then and so on with the until the salary. So I'm going to use the sequence. But before the sequence, I'm going to tell complex type. Complex type means the record element will have children. That's the meaning of that. So as you can see here in our XML, it has children: name, company, phone, date, hired, salary. So I'm going to say complex type. And to follow this order, I'm going to say sequence. So it's going to be like this. Okay, so I'm going to save it. Because there is still a missing part here, when you save it, it will give you an error like this. Okay, if you have if you have this XML validation here, or the XML tool here, that Notepad is automatically checking the validity when you save. Okay, so it's going to be like that. Now, because I'm going to use the record, here more than one time, as you can see here, I'm using it again here. So because I'm going to use it more than one time, I need this, what we call now the element cardinality. Okay, what is element cardinality? Okay, these are attributes that specifies mandatory, optional, or can appear up to a set of number of times. The default value will be 1. So these are attributes: min occurs and max occurs. Okay, so the default value of this will be 1. So 1 for min occurs and max occurs 1. So if you did not specify this, okay, as an attribute, okay, here, so you have to say, or you don't need to specify the min occurs if you're going to use the default values, which is, or value, which is 1. Here it is, right? So it means I can only use record element as one time only. So it will have a mistake here or error here if I still put the record here. I can only use it one time here. Okay, so that is the case. Now, because I want to use it more than one time, so I have record here, I have record here. So I can just say here, min occurs equal, let's say minimum is 1, or no need to put it. And then, because the default is 1, and then max occurs equal, let's say, I'm certain that I'm going to use 2. I'm going to use the element record 2 only, or twice only. I'm certain about that, so I can say 2 here. If I'm not sure how many times I will use the record here, so I can say here unbounded. Okay, so it's going to be like this. Right? So that's how it is. Now, as you can see, by the way, I am using here AA colon element. Again, AA is the namespace we specify here in our schema root element. And then followed by the AA is colon and then element. So whenever you are going to define an element, describe an element here in the XSD, you will be using element here. So AA colon element, and then the name of the element. So the name of the element is record. We're defining, or we're describing now the record. Here, again here, over here, we're trying to describe an element. It's called contact info. So name, contact info. It should be the same spelling in your XML document here. Okay, so that's the purpose of A equal or colon element. Okay, so again, AA here is the namespace you defined in your schema file here. So I'm going to save. Again, it is generating an error because there is still missing part here. All right, so it's going to be like that. So min occurs and max occurs, the default value will be 1. Okay, so if you put here 0, it means what? It means it means the record here in the XML document may exist. So for instance, like this. That's the meaning of that min occurs 0, meaning to say you will not use it, you may use it, or you may not use it in the XML document, because 0 means not there. I mean, the XML element record may be here in the XML, or it may not be there. It may not be there or may be there. So that's the meaning of 0. So if you put here again 1, that means you can only use it. The minimum times you can use it is 1. That's the minimum. Okay, so it's going to be like that. If you specify here 2, it means the minimum number of times you can use it is 2. So if you remove this, and it will generate an error. Alright, so it's going to be like this. Because you specify here min occurs 2. Okay. So again, if you did not specify it, the min occurs or the max occurs, if you did not specify it like this, it means min occurs, the value is 1. Okay, so it's the same as when you say like this. Minimum value is 1. Okay, so if you specify 1, okay, that's fine. If you did not specify min occurs, you did not totally put it or place it, still the value of minimum occurs or min occurs is 1. Okay, so it's going to be like that. If you are sure of how many times you will use the record, you can specify it here. If you are sure, let's say 3. So that's the maximum occurs. Okay, so meaning to say 2 here means you can use max occurs up to maximum of 2 times here. If you will put another one here, that will have an error. It will not validate it. Alright, so it's going to be like that. So I'm going to remove this. Okay, so if you are not certain how many you will put, if you are not certain, you are not sure, so you can just say unbounded. So it means more than 1. Unlimited, you can use record here. Okay. So that ends for the record. Now let's go on with the another one. Let's define now for the name. Name is a element. We can consider it as a simple element. When we say simple element, it means it doesn't have a child. It doesn't have an attribute. So we call it as a simple element. So a simple element can be written as something like this. So it can be something like here. Here it is, simple element. Okay, so you will notice there is already an ending tag here. Okay, so unlike contact info and record, you have an ending element here. All right, just like this one here. Why? Again, because the contact info and the record have children. Okay, if these elements have also attribute, it will be the same. So it must have an ending element, as you can see here. If it is only a basic element or a simple element, there will be no more ending element, but instead, at the end, before the greater than sign, there should be a slash there. So technically, it is something like an empty element. Okay, it's like an empty element. So we can now define that one here. So I will just copy the solution for that, which is this one here. And so we can say here now, inside the sequence will be something like this. So we're defining now the name, which is here. Okay, so because it's an element, again, we can say AA, that's the name of our namespace we defined here. So colon and then element. Then name, what's the name of the element? It's also called name. And data type will be string. Okay, before the string, you should specify also the namespace that you used, which is AA. Okay, so basically the difference between a simple element and an element with children is that simple element, it is just one-liner like this. Okay, with the element with children, you must have an ending element for the element here, as you can see here, and then you have to use complex type and the sequence. Okay, so simple element, one-liner, and you have to specify the data type. There are 6 data type, if I'm not mistaken. So here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So decimal for values that has decimal number. And if it is a whole number, integer. And if it is true or false value, boolean. And if it is a date, should be date. And time should be time. So the namespace followed by the colon and then the time. Okay, again, our namespace used here is AA. So it's going to be like that. Okay, so as you can see, the company, the phone, the date card, and the salary, all of them are just the same. I mean, in terms of what type of element, they are just the same. They are simply simple element. All right. So in this case, you can just copy this. Okay, let's do the company. So in this case, you can just copy this and just paste it there, and here it is, company. So now you have defined the company. You have described now the company. Okay, so to make it faster, a little bit faster, I'm just going to copy this and I'm just going to place it here. So as you can see, so this is for the phone. I will consider this phone as a string because it has special character dash here, the dash character. For the date card, I'm going to use the date string, the date type, data type. And for the salary, I'm going to use decimal because it has a decimal value here. Okay, so that's how it is. So I'm going to save it now. All right, I'm going to save this one now here. Oops. Okay, so it's going to be like that. Sequence here, complex type here, element here. So then we have here sequence. Oops. By the way, our complex type, we forgot this slash here. Sorry about that. We just put it here. No. So complex type here, we just put the ending element here. We just corrected it. Okay, I'm going to save now. Okay, see, because I save it and there is no error, I have an idea that there will be no error here because it did not appear or it did not show any error message. All right, so let's try if it is valid. Let's try if this is valid. If our XML here is valid, is our XML here following this description here that we describe here in our XSD file? To do that, to validate that, you have to go to your XML. You have to click inside the XML document, and you go to the plugins, XML Tools, Validate Now. So when you click that one, Validate, so it should appear as something like this. It means it is valid. Alright? So it's like this. So it means the description that you describe, or the rule that you describe for this XML document here, for this XSD file, is followed, and it's correct. Okay, this also includes spelling. For instance, you have used here for the phone without E, but here you describe it with an E, no? Phone, with the letter E at the end. So when you validate this, validate now here, it should show an error message. So this is an error message. So it says here, this element is not expected. Expected is phone. So you are given an idea what is the cause of the error. Okay, so it is expected that the name of the element is phone, but you have placed only phone without an E, no, PHON only. So it's either you change it here in your XSD file here, or you can just change your XML document here. So we can just correct it here. So now let's validate it again. XML Tools, validate that. There you go. All right. So again, going back to our min occurs and max occurs. Okay, so I placed here 1. So can I use it once? I'm going to remove this. I'm going to save. Okay, I saved it. So we have here record. We use it once. We specify once here, or 1. So it's still valid. Validate now. So it's still valid. Okay. If you don't use it, the record is not there. Totally, you did not use it. It's only like this. Let's say, let's validate it again. There you go. So it is missing because you said, its place here, min occurs 1. Or even if you did not specify it, it's still, the value is 1, right? That's the default. If you did not specify it, value is still 1, so still an error there. Let's place it, all right, here as you can see. So I'm going to validate again, validate now, and now it's okay because min occurs is still 1. We specify 2, will it be fine? Let's see. It's still good, all right, because minimum number of times you can use is 1, but we have 2, so that's fine. Max occurs. Max occurs, let's just put the min occurs. Max occurs unbounded. That means any number of times you can use this record here. All right. However, if you put here 1, go to save and validate now. Make sure when you validate, you have to be here in your XML document. You have to place your cursor in the XML document and click Plugins, XML Tools, Validate now. So as you can see, this element is not expected, all right? Record, this one is not expected. Why? Because you mentioned here 1 only, and then you have 2 here, all right? If you wish, or if you want, you can specify 2 here. Let's click inside XML document, Plugins, Validate now. This is valid because you specify 2, and you have 2 here. You have used the record element 2 times. If you specify 3, that's the maximum, that is still fine. You have only 2 here, but you specify 3 here, that is just fine. Okay, so the maximum is 3 times. You have 2, that is just fine. Let's validate. It's still valid. So again, if you are not certain how many times you will use it, you can say unbounded. Okay, so it's going to be like that. Now, also for the date here, okay, you have to follow this format here. So year, month, and day. Okay, that's how it is. If you specify here, let's say 40, there is no day 40, right? Up to 31 maximum. So when you validate it, so this data is not valid value of atomic type date. So it's going to be like that. So you just have to follow this one here, year, month, day. So in the same way, if you make this one 01 dash, let's say 30, and then the year, so you did not follow that format, year, month, day, and then I'm going to save now. So if you did not follow that format, year, month, day, it will still be the same problem, as you can see. So that's how it is. So you have to make sure that your date should be year, month, and day. Okay, so again, this is how you do your XSD file. Okay, so again, min occurs here. It means min occurs the minimum number of times you can use an element. Max occurs will be the maximum number of times you can use that element. So let's say, for instance, let's have it here in the date. In the phone. So can I use it here? Yes. Again, you can use min occurs and max occurs as attribute inside an element. All right, here. So min occurs, let's say there should be at least one phone number, and for instance, max occurs up to 2 only. So meaning to say, you can use phone with a minimum number of times of 1 and a maximum occurs of 2. So for instance here, I will use more than 2 times. Will that be okay? I'm going to save both file, the XSD file and the XML file. You have to save both before you will validate it. So let's validate now. There you go. So it's still valid. If you use it again, that will not be valid because you have mentioned here max occurs 2. So let's validate if it is correct. See, it's wrong because you specify 3 here. You have used the phone 3 times, but you specify only max occurs 2. So maximum is 2 only. Alright. So as simple as this. Okay. Now let's see if we have covered all the topics. So I think I have covered. Okay. So let's see. Alright. I think this one I have not covered. The default and the fixed value. What are these? Okay, so for the default, if there is no value for the element, default value is used. For the fix, it means you cannot use any other value except the specified fixed value. So for instance, let's have an example here. This is for element, no? For instance, for the company, the default value that I want is, for instance, ABC company. Alright, what do you mean by that? So it means the default value will be ABC company, which means that if you did not specify, for instance, here in the second here, if you did not specify a value for the company here, the element company, but here you specify, it means this one here, the element company here, will use the default value ABC company. It means the value of this company is ABC company. Okay, so let's try. I'm going to validate and validate now. So as you can see, it's still valid. Okay, you can also specify your own. That's your own value. In this case, DEF Logistics, here, ABC Company. We have already, we did validate it already a while ago, and it's still valid. That's the meaning of the default value. Okay. Now what about fix? If we change this to fix, it means, as the name implies, the value for the company element should be and always will be ABC Company. And so therefore here, on the second record here, we have here DEF Logistics. So this will not work, right? Because the value that you put here is DEF Logistics and the fixed value is ABC Company. So it should be ABC Company. Let us see first if it is going to be validated or it is valid, if it is valid. So that's the problem now here. So it gives you this error message here. The actual value DEF does not match, right, the fixed value constraint, ABC Company. So it should be and will always be ABC Company, or the value that you specify here in the fix attribute of the element company. Okay, so it means the element company will always have a value of ABC Company. Right? So when you save that and validate now, that will be valid now. Okay, so you cannot specify a different value other than you specify in the fixed value. In the same manner, if you remove it, there is no value, it works as something like default. No, it's like default. So if you did not specify, still the value will be ABC Company. So let's try it. Plugins, XML Tools, validate now. It's still valid. Alright, so that's the difference between the two. Default value, you can specify any value for that element. In this case, it is company element. Okay, and if it is without a value, so it will use that default value. It is the same as in fix. If you did not specify, so the value you specify here in the fix, that will be the value of the element name here if it is missing. However, if it is not missing and it has a value for the company, right, the value will always be ABC Company because that is the one that you specify here. So just remember, whatever you specify here in the fixed value here, if you are using the fixed attribute, then that will be the value you have to specify here in the company here. Alright, so it's going to be like that. So that is the fixed value and the default value. So we're going to validate it for the last time, so it's valid. Alright, so I think I have covered now all the topics that I have mentioned here. Okay, so it's all here. Alright, so as you can see here. Okay, so let's go back here for the all here. Again, if you can specify here instead of sequence, compositor. No? So there are only 3 compositors: sequence, choice, all. So if you specify here all, what do you mean by the all? All means the child elements described in this XSD file can appear in XML document in any order. So it means in any order. So meaning to say, if salary will be here and the salary on the second record here will be on the last, this is just fine because I said compositor, or I used the compositor all. That means in any order here. That's the meaning of that. Okay, so if we validate now, okay, now here you have to why we have a mistake. We should have no error here. Now you see here, invalid value for max occurs must be 0 or 1. The reason why this one came is because one of the children we have used 2. This is the problem with all, no? So the compositor all. This is the problem with compositor all. If you will be using min occurs and max occurs, make sure the value will always be 0 or 1 only. You can specify more than 1. Okay, so if both value will be 1, then no need for you to put. That's the problem with the all. It will only accept min occurs 1 and max occurs 1. Okay, so let's validate it again. That's the reason why there is an error, right? Date hard. Okay, so did I save this? Let's see. Date hard. Salary. Okay. Okay. So the reason why we have an error, because I said here min occurs 1, max occurs 1. But we have here more than one phone, no? Look at that. Min occurs 1, max occurs 1 for the phone here. So you see, we have a mistake, so we're correcting the mistakes. So, meaning to say, I can only use the phone minimum of 1 time only and a maximum of 1 time only. So, this is the mistake here. We're just correcting it. So, let's see now if it is going to work. So, validate now. Alright, so it's valid. Alright, so that's the meaning of the all. Okay, again, for the all, if you're going to use the all, it will mean that you can have your own order here. It will not follow the exact order here. Because if you are going to use sequence here, okay, instead of all, so the order will be name, company, phone, date hired, salary. That is the one that you have to put here. So name first, company, phone, date hired, salary. But if it is all, you are going to use the compositor all. That means in any order that you want. So for instance, the salary here is at the first. No? So it's not in order here. So that is just fine. That is the meaning of the all. And then you will put now the phone here. It's also valid. No? So it will still be valid. Okay. So that's the purpose of the sequence. The all. Okay, but the sequence, it means, again, I'm going to return it to sequence. It means it should follow the description. Sequence, alright? Right here, see? It should follow this order. Here, it followed, okay, no problem here. But this one, it did not follow the order. Alright, so let's see. I'm going to save, validate, XML Tools, validate. See, that's the problem now here. Okay, so we have to follow this order. So name first. Okay, the salary will be at the last. And then after that, phone should be on the third. Alright, so it's going to be like that. Now, did we follow name, company, phone, date hired, salary? So it should be good now. Validate now, and it's now valid. Alright, and the last one will be the choice. Alright, choice. What do you mean by the choice? Only one of the child element described in the XSD schema can appear in the XSD document. So, only one can appear, no? So when you use choice, okay, let's put here choice. If you use choice, again, you will just use this compositor for elements with children. Alright, so in this case, the record have children, name, company, price, date, hired, salary. Now, if you're going to use the compositor choice, again, it means you can only use one of these 5 here. So for instance, here, let us see, I'm going to use only salary. Here, I'm going to use only name. Okay, I'm going to save. Okay, validate. Plugins, XML Tools, validate now. It is still valid. It is valid. Why? Because that's the meaning of the choice. Choice means any one of these, only one, can be used only here. Alright, here in the XML document. Only one of the elements that you describe here can be used here. Alright, only one in the XML document. If you put, or if you place 2, for instance, alright, here itself, we can check now. I'm going to save, validate, plugins, validate. here. That will be an error because you can only use one. Okay, any one of these. Okay, any one of these you can place it here. All right, only one you can put here in the XML document. That's the meaning of the choice. So usually we use sequence here. All right, so that it will follow the order that you specify. All right, so when we validate now, all right, still valid. So those are the compositors, the sequence, choice, and all. Okay, so I think I have covered all the topics here now. Okay. Okay, so again, the very purpose of the schema file is to describe the XML document you have created here. You have created. You can specify, you can describe the order of the elements, the data that you can put in a particular element, how many times an element can be used, all right, minimum number of times it can be used, maximum number of times it can be used. Okay, that's the purpose of the XSD file. For my next video, I'm going to discuss to you, this is the part 2, I'm going to discuss, or I'm going to explain the attributes, if there is or there are attributes in an element. As you can see, we don't have an attribute here. So plain and simple elements, right? So if an element have an attribute, so we can also specify here. We can also describe it in XSD. Also the restrictions, the restriction of data. For example, I want a number for the salary. The salary value can only be from 500 to 1,000 only. All right. For example, another example will be for the name. The value that I can place here will be all capital letters. So these are what we call restrictions. Okay. So I will be discussing those on my next video. Please watch that video. Okay. Watch out for it. And I'm going to upload that soon. Okay. So I hope you have learned in this tutorial video about how to create an XML schema file for an XML document. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you have learned. If you are not yet subscribed in this channel, please do subscribe. Hit also the notification bell so that you will be updated. You will be notified if I have a new video. And also, you can place your comment if you have a question about this video, about this topic. You can place your question in the comment below or comment section below. Thank you very much and see you on my next video.